Welcome to the Deployed Podcast, where strategy, ideas, and capital come to life.
Hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining us on another episode of Deployed. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Michael Kearse. I'm a real estate investor and co-founder of Ameripath USA. Over the last several years, I've helped investors deploy millions into affordable real estate, consistent, secure returns, while helping families across the country achieve home ownership. I created Deploy because I realized everyone has capital, whether it be money, knowledge, relationships, but few deploy it intentionally. This show is about the art and science of deployment and how high performers turn potential into power. Today, my special guest is Candice Thompson, someone who is not only a psychotherapist in Silicon Valley, but she's also a TEDx speaker. Welcome, Candice. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, same here. Same here. Thank you so much. So, how do you usually introduce yourself to people who don't know you or your world?
Yeah, so I am a psychotherapist, which is a fancy term for talk therapy. It's what you imagine when you're thinking about someone that's talking with you about your emotions. I tend to work with high achievers around anxiety, depression, and trauma, and I am located in the Silicon Valley. So a lot of my work recently has been transitioning to advocate around my industry and how it's been intersected very quickly with technology, with these big telehealth platforms, and now AI. And it's the growing use of AI right now is for emotional support and companionship. And there's been a lot of talk about it on the news. And so, really trying to inform the consumer of what is actual quality of care, what is the term therapist actually means. And, you'll see a lot of life coaches too that are on the scene that'll use therapeutic terms, but they can't practice without a license. So, really, in this part of my career, I'm trying to educate the next generation. I teach as well at some grad programs to upcoming therapists. So, I have my hands in a lot of different cookie jars, but all of them are based on helping this generation with mental health.
Absolutely, absolutely. Wow, there's a lot to unpack there. Thanks for sharing that. So, my first question is one, in Silicon Valley, I bet that you've been busy when you talk about high achievers, anxiety, depression. I'm not sure if you've seen, there was an HBO show that did a great job of the comic relief around that community. But I can imagine, right, those high
Yeah,
achievers.
is it the Silicon Valley, that show?
Yeah, yes, yes. Oh, I love that show. Yes. So I can imagine with seed rounds and investor
Uh,
capital, you have not had trouble finding work.
I mean, certainly it's a great place to be a therapist, and I have a private practice, so I would say financially people can afford private therapy, which is great. A lot of other areas where, accessibility and equity is a really hard conversation for being a therapist. So that's been fantastic. And it's thrilling work because my clients are doing some of the most exciting things, in the world. And I wish I could list them. I can't because of confidentiality, but it's an exciting place to be. And I think what's unique about the Silicon Valley is because the mass amount of wealth that's there and just expertise, people can have quite a godlike complex and feel invincible because the sky is the limit. But as all humans struggle, no matter money doesn't fix things. And we've seen that time and time again in history when wealthy, famous people end up taking their own lives or getting involved in substance use because you get to the top and you think it's going to feel one way and we're still human. And what matters the most is still the people around us and the way we feel inside.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, you are in a unique position where you can really speak to that because sometimes people don't believe that, especially when they're ambitious and chasing money and things like that. So then leading into the IT technology and now with the rise of AI, I was especially intrigued by the title of your TEDx, right? And you mentioned that the rise of people relying on AI for companionship, right? And for that emotional support or the therapist. What are your thoughts on that? Why is that the case? Why do we see a rise in it?
Yeah, all this is very recent. I think AI chatbots have just gotten to a point in the last, 6 months where they're able to have what feels like a human conversation. And so you say, I'm stressed out. It's low hanging fruit. You don't have to call a friend. You're just on your computer alone. It's easy. Working on something for work, you're using it for that, maybe editing a paper, an email, coding, and then slipping into this more human relationship. It talks like a human. It's coded that way. And so it's very alluring. It also has what's called the sycophancy effect, which means that it agrees with you no matter if you're accurate or not. So it's very flattering. You say, my boss said this to me, and it goes straight into validation. Wow, that sounds so hard. I can't believe that happened to you. Of course you
Right.
would feel this way. And as a human, we only know other human to human experiences. So we internally feel the way we would feel if a best friend or coworker said the same thing. It's validating,
Mm-hmm.
makes us feel good. And what's happening is it's built to optimize engagement. That's how
Mm-hmm.
apps are considered successful, is how many people use them and how long we are on their apps for. And
Mm-hmm.
so that optimizes the engagement when we use them and they're telling us all these things we want to hear and we keep coming back. And so you've got this rise right now of people thinking this is just as good as a human conversation. It feels good. It almost feels like for some people, this special relationship, because who else in the world unfettered says, you're so right, Michael, I can't believe you brought that up, you're so smart, of course you would feel this way,
Mm-hmm.
you feel special, maybe the
Mm-hmm.
way that only your mom made you feel growing up, or a romantic partner in history during that like romantic phase. And that's so different from therapy, because of course a good therapist wants to attune to you and make you feel aligned and heard, but our job also is to unpack and to challenge you, to help you see the blind spots. AI
Yes.
doesn't do that. And so, as humans, this non confrontational, easy, self focused relationship is just stroking our egos. And they've become quite popular. And then, alongside just that natural misuse of the tool,
Mm-hmm.
is all of these companies that are encouraging that use and now building platforms and calling it, therapy, AI therapy. So, yeah, it's quite a recipe right now. And I know it's not just my industry. I think a lot of industries are being touched by AI, in jobs and culture. But it's
Yeah.
happening faster than our brains evolve, which is
Mm-hmm.
the wild thing about technology is we still have brains that look closer to cavemen than we do this high-tech environment. We only evolve over lots of time.
Yeah. No.
Right? No match for all of this change.
Wow. Well, great. I love the way you shared that. Have you gotten a lot of pushback from maybe some of your therapy clients who may have relied on it or may bring it to the sessions? Has that happened? Have you seen situations like that?
Yeah, so there's a whole new subculture right now of therapists that are working on integrating the AI relationship. So it's like AI informed. In any relationship, if your client comes in and, they're talking about their boyfriend and it sounds very toxic, you can't just say, stop that or leave that man. That's not going to work. So attuning with someone is a part of the process and accepting that what they're doing is a part of their life. And it's not my job to control or change anyone. It's to give them information and challenge them in a way where they come to healthier conclusions themselves. So I certainly know the names of some of my clients' bots, and they bring them into therapy and we can joke about them. And my encouragement is always that, they have a healthy relationship. And luckily, those clients are also seeing me. So they're not siloed. They're not only using these bots, they are coming to therapy. They've become, a very easy, accessible companion.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine. Well, thanks for sharing with me. I have some experience with that in my life, so it was kind of cool to hear it from your perspective. So thanks for sharing. But I want to change the script a little bit. I want to go back for a second before all of the wins, because obviously being in a position that you're in, you've had a lot of success. But I want to know who you were before the success showed up.
Mm.
So were there any early struggles getting into this career? Was this the career that you started out wanting to do? Tell me about that.
Yeah, great question. So when I was in college, I always thought I'd be a lawyer. I was on the debate team in high school, and that was, tons of trophies from that. And I became the captain my senior year. So like law was where my heart was at. But then in college, I had a therapist who was like a grad student getting her hours on campus. And I loved her. She was just fantastic and helped walk me through like natural identity crisis stuff at, early 20s. And because of her, I switched my trajectory and decided to, take a psych maybe 101 class and loved it. And it just felt like so interesting to me. Learning about the human mind and neuroscience has just always been fascinating. So switched my career and went into grad school. What is challenging about therapists And what has created the environment that we have right now with like telehealth markets, lowballing therapists, is that when you're to become a therapist, you have to get all of these hours, 3,000 hours before you can sit down for your board exams. It's similar to if a doctor's getting like residency, but you don't really get paid for that. And sometimes you do it for free or like for peanuts. And so I didn't come from a background where my parents were paying for my education. I wasn't
Mhm.
married at the time. So it was a lot of hard work to, figure out ways to pay my bills and to also get these hours and then lay the foundation of private practice, which is essentially your own business, but no one in the therapy world talks about business. There's no grad class about how to have a practice, how to have a business, nothing. No
Really
branding, marketing conversation. So
interesting.
I have had to really learn along the way. And a lot of that has been through just like observation, seeing other people that are doing things that I want to do and trying to mimic that and just having this strong belief, even now in my career, having this strong belief of these other milestones that I have next, like that they're just possible. And I'm going to do my part in, putting that effort out there and hoping that those doors open up.
Interesting. Interesting. Thanks for sharing that. Once you made the transition to this career field, was private practice always a goal, or did that
Oh,
kind of
God, good
stumble
question.
upon?
I think it was for like one day. Like one day it'll be easier to have a private practice. But the opportunity presented itself sooner than I, would have imagined. Like when I got my license, I actually had a therapist at the time and she was like, "Oh, I know this guy who has a private practice. You should reach out to him." And so I did. And he was like, "Oh, I have an office space. If you want to rent office space, from me, we'll send you referrals, whatever." And so right after I got my license, I opened up a private practice on the side. And so
Wow.
I'm a low risk entrepreneur. So I had an agency job. I worked for a nonprofit and then would see clients on the weekends and then, one night a week. And then just over time increased my private practice and decreased my agency work until it was feasible to fully go into private practice. So I think those
Wow.
safety nets in this industry is really important. When I've had associates, which are therapists getting their hours before licensure with me, just the amount of time it takes to get a name out there for yourself, let people know you're there. It takes a while. And so I feel
Interesting.
like I have so much to say. People don't always ask me questions as a therapist. So this is so fun.
I know all about it. So I have an undergrad in psychology.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah, I was always fascinated by the mind and how people think and, myself, how I think. And I've learned like the saying, like you have two ears, God gave you two eyes and two ears and one mouth for a reason. So I've
Hmm.
learned not to talk so much and not throw up on people as much.
Uh-huh.
And so people tend not to ask me a lot of questions and I
Uh,
tend not to talk about myself a lot.
mm,
Well, I understand what you mean. Wow. Oh, this feels good. Like I never am the one. Because even when I went to my therapist, I had to say like, oh, this does feel good to just like talk
yeah,
sometimes. So I know exactly what
absolutely. Yeah, it
so
does.
fun. So how does one become a TEDx speaker? That-
Yeah. So part of my more recent success is that in my journey as a therapist, so I've been in private practice now over 10 years and I have small children. And once they started going to school, I just had more capacity. And so in a season of my life, maybe 2 years ago, I was talking to a seasoned therapist and was just like, how did you do kind of the next level? I want trainees underneath me. I want to teach. Like there's all the stuff I want to do and I have time for it. She was like, oh, get a LinkedIn. Never thought of that before. Again, like therapy is so different than any other industry. A lot of our work is like covert ops. You see people,
Yeah.
oh, it's all confidential and you're having these deep conversations. And so I started a LinkedIn and instantly I think I was hit with like jealousy of
Really?
seeing what other people were doing. And a
Okay.
lot of the other people were honestly like life coaches. And so what's
Uh-huh.
so cool about LinkedIn is you can go on someone's page and basically look at their resume, like where they go to school, what do they study,
Yeah.
what's their career path. And not to knock the whole industry, there's a time and a place for life coaches, but they would talk about basically mental health. And they have
Yeah.
like a communications degree and they went, they were in corporate business and then they transitioned. I'm like, I have so much more experience. I've been a therapist for over 10 years. I could do this. So it actually became quite a motivator for me where I decided to take everything I was jealous of and I said, I'm going to do that. So that year which was last year, I did like 18 speaking engagements. I hosted a retreat. I got my first adjunct teaching position. I was just like,
Wow.
yeah, on a roll. Anything I saw, I just felt like I could do the juice. I'm going to go for it. So
Wow.
something that added to that list, my goal for 2025 was to apply for a TEDx. Just apply. I knew it'd take a while to like get one. But gosh, it's a longer story, but a few things I think are important for people to hear. One, I talked to a coach who said like for $8,000, they would help you coach, you to apply.
Yeah.
And I'm a DIY girl. I don't want to spend more money than I have to, because my question always is, in times like that, is could I do it better myself? And so I'm
Right.
listening to her, and she's not guaranteeing me the process. She's just going to coach me through writing a proposal and getting the opportunity to pitch it.
Right.
So I'm like, $8,000, that's crazy. So I didn't do that, which just, for people thinking about, is it worth paying for? Sometimes it is. If you're someone who's not motivated, having those coaches along the way are fantastic, because they're going to
Right.
keep you accountable and motivate you.
Yeah.
That's not me. I'm motivated.
Right.
So I didn't do that. But in the process of doing all my speaking engagements, one of the gals that I spoke with was a 2-time TEDx speaker. And so I just picked her brain. Again, just talking to people, relationships. I'm sure ChatGPT has its own, experience, but that's not real. So when you're talking to a person, they could say, oh, here's the person that got me a TEDx. You
Right.
should reach out to her.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I reached out to her. Her name's Irina. She's a curator. And I pitched her my idea over just a, online coffee chat. And she was like, great, I'll pencil you in. And I, had for months knots in my stomach, because pencil is not the same thing as a confirmation. And it didn't feel real until it was, and this November, last month, I gave my first TEDx talk. And
That's
it
awesome.
was nerve-wracking, but exactly what I hoped it would be. So I think networking, if you're looking for takeaways, networking, believing in yourself. And I think there's like this synergy that the universe, whether you believe in God or a higher power, has with you. And so when you say, I want to do this thing, and you're willing to put in the work, because that's a big part. A lot of people feel like they just deserve something and don't actually put the work in. When you put the work in and put yourself out there, I think doors do open up, and it's easier to get those like lifelong milestones.
Well said. Well said. I think the part that I really like about psychology in this industry is once you learn how the mind works, and I guess I probably look at a lot of things this way. How can I use this to my advantage? And what I've taken from that is something that you said, like how the universe has synergy. Like there is, whether it's true or not, there are things that people who have been successful say about mindset, goal setting, putting it out there, putting the effort out there. And it's worked for me. So it's been
Yeah.
pretty cool. That's one of the things I love about the mind and the subconscious and how we can kind of program
Yeah.
ourselves for success. So that's pretty
Absolutely.
cool. Thanks for sharing that. That's an awesome story. So you built something incredible, right? But I know success is more than mindset. It's more mindset than mechanics, like you mentioned. I want to unpack how you think. What are some principles or beliefs that guide you on how you make decisions today?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm very intuitive, so I think intuition is a big part of it, and really taking moments to pause and think about what you're saying yes to. Because sometimes things will come your way and it sounds really flattering or ego boosting, but I have to remind myself, like, it's also what you don't do and what you let go and what you don't spend your time on. So being really practical about what's the outcome of this. Am I gonna, if I spend my time on this, whether it's a talk or, a podcast or writing something, what's the outcome? And is it actually in aligned with the outcome? Because sometimes we spend a lot of time toiling on stuff, but it might be on a different path than what we're actually wanting. And so really thinking about what's that path? What are the steps to get there? And then making decisions on, right, like, am I prepared for this? Can I do it? And is there a door open to me? That's kind of have been my guiding principle. I will say, like, in my life, therapy is my superpower. I can't say, and we're all human, not every area of my life feels the way that my career has felt. There's always felt like that kind of magic, God energy to it, where the things like doors open up. And again, you have to put yourself out there. So you don't sit on the couch and doors open up and you're, doing nothing. But I felt like when I've put myself out there, doors open up. And so it's easy to make those decisions because I've put so much work into it before that opportunity.
Wow. I resonate with that wholeheartedly. I think the way that you communicated that, I feel the same way, right? Not every part of my life is, great and successful, but when it comes to the career, right, I recognize what I'm good at, my intuition, my foresight, able to plan, able to envision, okay, yes, I can do that. I can see how that would add to what I'm trying to accomplish. And it just seems like things sometimes just fall into place from a career perspective. So that's pretty cool. Thanks for sharing that. We talk a lot here about how people deploy their capital, right? And not just financially, but intellectually, relationally. So I'm curious on how that looks for you. When you think of capital, what does that mean to you?
I mean, in the Silicon Valley, that only needs money. So it's really interesting to hear you say capital can include these other things, right? Like being rich in expertise or relationship. I'm going to put that in my pocket because it's so valuable. And especially in our day and age when prices seem to be going up and job opportunities seem to be, coming down a bit, capital feels like it has to be money. But again, if we go back to the beginning of this conversation, those who are the richest aren't the happiest. So widening the perspective of what success, I love that because I think money is the first thing that does come to mind. And I am successful in a lot of ways. However, I'm still in healthcare, right? So the amount of money that I can make as a therapist, of course, if I started writing books, or there are possibilities for me, but the majority of therapists are not the wealthiest people.
Mm,
So, I think a lot of times those greater forms of capital can feel out of reach for therapists because we've been our head down in books working for free for so many years. And then you get a private practice and you're like, whoa, this is successful. But don't look to the right or the left to the VCs in your life. That's what's hard about being in the Valley is
mm,
that there are multi-millionaire neighbors and you can't really compare in that way, or you're going to be forever stuck feeling like, I'm never going to IPO, unless who knows, maybe I'll partner with an AI company one day or something. But in my current future, I cannot imagine a world where I amass wealth like that. And so I
yeah.
appreciate widening perspective.
Yeah. And I appreciate you sharing your perspective because to your point, I remember talking to a mentor of mine. And, he was like, Mike, I got lucky. I sold my tech company at the right time. I didn't predict it. I'm not going to say that I was smart. I just got lucky. And I think he net like 12 million. And he told me that he felt like he was successful and he was rich until he went down to, I think, Palm Springs. And he was like,
Uh-huh.
that's when I realized like I'm nothing. So to your point, right? It just focus on what your goals are and what you're comfortable with because it's easy
Yes.
to say, oh, wow, I thought I was successful. And if you're around all of
Yes.
these crazy successful
Yes.
people,
And someone will
like,
always be richer. So I have clients that are incredibly wealthy. And to hear them struggle with money, they have amounts of money that I can't really imagine. But then you have to think, well, now your mortgage is that high and that private school is that high. And now the people you're running with are doing these activities and the activities your kids are doing are, cost a lot of money. And all of a sudden money's tight again. And so it's wild. You have to have that perspective. I think with social media too, sometimes it's like this ongoing sense of like acquiring more likes, more followers, more engagement. Something I've tried to practice recently has been the small win. Like that person that reached out to you and said, I like this. And realizing that's a win. That person matters. You
hmm
don't
hmm
have to have 100 people saying that to feel good.
hmm
But it's hard because as humans, we compare, which is it's part of what keeps us, successful and on track is we are creatures that are looking around at our pack and saying like, hey, what are other people doing when we're trying to find our place? So there's a natural part in that, but we have to ground ourselves too. And like, okay, I can compare, but this is where I'm at today. And so what are the things today that I'm grateful for and that feel like success to me?
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. So is there like, how do you decide when we talk about those different types of capital, whether it be time, money, attention, friends, how do you decide where you deploy it or where you focus?
Yeah, that's a great question. Such a good question. Man, this feels like my own little bit. I'm just kidding.
I told you I have a psych background.
Exactly. You're good at it. Yeah. I mean, I think like all of us, you constantly have to assess and recalibrate, right? Like, even in the stuff that I'm doing, a lot of the projects I do are for fun, right? Like, I didn't make money from the TEDx. Maybe I will, make money from that opportunity, but the opportunity itself didn't pay. There's a
Mhm.
lot of parts of business that you don't make money on the front end. If you're contributing to an article or doing a podcast, it's fun and it's success in another way. I'm getting my message out there in the world. That's important to me. But so always having to recalibrate, right? How much time am I spending earning money and contributing to those goals? How much time is going to just some pure message and connection and relationships? How much time goes to family? And I think having some kind of pie that you can make for yourself of, okay, here are all the areas in life: money, education, like hobbies, leisure, relationships. Spirituality is so important for humans, whatever that means to you. Engaging in your connection with God or the universe, time alone. And so then really being able to say, and I've honestly done this throughout my life, just like, okay, what did I do today to put into each of these buckets, and making sure at the end of the week, at the end of the month, there's an evening out process where, okay, I'm feeding into my full self. And it's not just me in all my career, but that there's these other aspects of me that I'm investing in that multiply throughout my life.
I like it. I like it. Thanks for sharing that. And I like how you broke down the different aspects, spirituality, time alone, social recreation. A lot of goal setting books that I've looked at. Sometimes it's 7, I think sometimes it's 9 type of like human areas in life where they say, okay, let's write goals for each one of these. So it's always
Yeah.
interesting to hear everyone's perspective. Are there any opportunities getting your attention these days?
Getting my attention, like what I want or what I'm putting my time into. So,
I would
okay,
say a little bit of both.
this is how I heard that question, is like, what's next? So for me, I like to have goals. And I think just like any other human, once you hit a goal, it's hard to sit in the like basking of it. So the TED came out. I did it early November. It came out online 2 weeks ago. And my brain is already like, now what? Now what? So what's next is I really want to get into some kind of broadcast, whether that's like a commentator, like a mental health commentator. That would be my dream next thing, is like being on like NPR or something and being
Nice.
able to contribute on a larger platform. So that's what I'm putting my attention into, is like submitting articles. And yeah, I have a meeting later this week with like an anchor just to talk about getting into broadcasting. So that just becomes fun for me. It's not, again, this is not what I'm getting paid for, but it keeps me mentally engaged, and having a project and just like these little milestones in life of like, oh, wouldn't that be cool? Wouldn't that be so cool to see my name in like some reputable, news outlet? And so then I'll do my part and see what happens.
Well, wow, you're on your way. I mean, TEDx. That's a pretty cool accomplishment. It's awesome. I'm gonna be watching for you. I like to end on like legacy and reflection. Right?
Yeah.
So, how would you? What's one lesson about money or life that you want to pass on to your kids or to your younger self?
Want my children to know about investments in a way that I didn't. I think because my parents came from like a poverty background, there are things that they just didn't know to do. I never understood the value of a 401k or, putting money into other investments. So teaching my daughter early in life, even if you're making a little bit of money, that having those investments multiply is really important for your financial health. I really want the things that I've done to become my daughter's new floor, that she can stand on my shoulders and take from all the things that I have learned. Yes, learning about financial literacy is, for some people, they are born into it and they get to amass wealth, and that's fantastic, and such a wonderful opportunity. And for others like myself, you have to learn a whole new language along the way. And I kick myself that I didn't start a 401k when I was an intern back 20 years ago. But then you do what you can do today and teach those lessons to the next generation.
Awesome. I love that. I love that. Yeah, synergies as well, right? I had to learn financial literacy. I think I started this journey 10 years ago. And for me, it was Googling the top books on wealth and just reading
Mhm.
them. And I knew that I was reprogramming my mind and changing how I thought. And one of the lessons that I would have been trying to share with my children is, I think Jim Rome said it. He said, when you earn a dollar, you don't really have a dollar, right? You take 10 cents and you put it in tithing, and you maybe Then you have another 10 cents and you put that in savings. And then you have another 10 cents and you may use that to invest in something. And then you have the other 70. And then now we know maybe from that 70, you may have to take another 20 for taxes.
Yeah, right.
That's my nice. I try to teach
You
my
really only
children.
have 50 cents.
Yeah. Well, that's all the time we had
Absolutely.
today. Again, this was awesome. Thank you so much for joining. For those
Yeah.
who have joined again today, thank you for listening. We'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you so much. Go watch my TED Talk.
You've been watching the Deployed podcast, where we deploy insight, capital, and growth.